Welcome to Praise, Prayer and Preaching with the Rev Dr Rick Dacey, Senior Minister, Wesley Congregational Life.
A little while back, I was going on a flight. I had been through security and was on my way to the gate, and I got randomly selected to be given the extra security treatment by airport staff. So they took me aside, they ushered me into a small room, and first they had me stand with my arms and legs out, and they ran the wand thing all over me, and then one staff member started looking through my hand luggage, while another one looked at my passport and peppered me with questions. And while I was answering the questions, another guy came up and he started swabbing my computer bag with some other wand and looking for, I don't know what, explosives. The whole thing didn't take very long, maybe a couple of minutes, and they thanked me and they invited me to go ahead and board the plane. And I understand the need for it. I can accept it. But still, I had to say I didn't like it. I knew I had done nothing wrong. I knew I had no intention of doing anything wrong. I knew I had nothing to hide. But I still didn't like the feeling of being searched. I didn't like the feeling of somebody rummaging through my stuff. I didn't like that. It felt invasive, intrusive, being searched. I don't think I'm alone in this. Am I alone in this? Or do you like being searched? Who wants to be searched? Who wants someone rummaging through your belongings or interrogating your life? So it's striking that Psalm 139 opens with the celebration. You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. I think that we just established that most of us don't like the idea of being searched, of having anyone search us. But the psalmist celebrates it. His life is inextricably bound up with God in loving relationship. You and me, Lord. You and me, Lord. You know when I sit down and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. We hear this rhythm building through the psalm. You and me, Lord. You and me. You and me. Notice this. It's not that you assimilate me. It's not that you, God, are this great ocean and I'm a drop of water. What happens when a drop of water hits the great ocean? See, this is what a lot of people think relationship with God is about. That the drop hits the water and becomes one with the ocean. That's not what the psalmist is singing about here. That's not the relationship. No, when a drop of water touches the ocean, it loses its identity. It is canceled out and becomes part of the vast ocean. The moment the drop hits the ocean, it ceases to be a drop. It loses its name. It loses its sense of me. And the psalmist's song is about a very different kind of relationship. He sings to the infinite and eternal God who does not cancel him out, who does not absorb him and assimilate him, but who gives him his own unique, wonderful identity in relationship with him. And we hear the nature of this relationship in the repetition of the Hebrew root yada. It means to know. And we see this in this psalm. You know me, yada. You know me. We see it 7 times in verse 1, in verse 2, in verse 4, in verse 6, in verse 14, and twice in verse 23. There's a rhythm in this psalm, yada. Yada is this, it's a very rich Hebrew word, and it's kind of one of these really all-encompassing words, but it also, it entails and it contains this sense of the most close and intimate personal relationship. So when the psalmist is saying, you know me, he's not saying, well, of course you know because you know everything. God, you're omniscient. That's not what he's saying. He's not saying you know about me. He's saying, you know me. In this most personal and intimate way. He knows that he's neither an isolated individual nor a drop of water lost in an endless sea, but he is a beloved creation known by his Creator. He writes, for you created me in my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Yada. I am known. Fearfully and wonderfully made. Not in terror fear, but in awe and reverence. And wonderfully, made full of wonder. How awesome and how wonderful is it to be created by a loving God who wants to be in covenant relationship with us? The God of the universe, beyond the universe, wants to be in covenant, giving relationship with us, who wants to be, not to take away from us, not to cancel us out, not to wipe us out, but to bring us out, to call us out, to become all that we are created to be. Why is it, I mean, this sounds wonderful. Why is it that everyone is not singing the psalmist's song, you have searched me and known me. You know me. Why is it that, because it's not just the psalmist that God has created fearfully and wonderfully. We all are, all of us. So why is the world not singing this song? Why are we not celebrating? See, the psalmist recognizes that being known by God is how we come to know ourselves. Being valued and treasured by God is how we come to value and treasure ourselves. But that means, maybe this is it, that means being changed. That means being changed. Not canceled out, not assimilated, but changed. Anytime we enter into a real relationship, it changes us in a real way. We all want change. How many of us are prepared to be changed? It's a different dynamic. God enters into covenant relationship with us. That is giving relationship, promise relationship with us. That's how God works. It's not a contract relationship where we try and get the most out of each other. It's not a transaction where we give this for that. He's not looking to get something out of us. God isn't looking to get something out of us. God is looking to give to us, to add to us, to complete us. And that's good, but it is change. And you see that change in the overlapping circles. Nothing of me is taken away by the overlap. When my life is bound up with the living God, nothing of me is taken away, but there is change in me. Where the colors blend, there is a change in me. So you can see why we can be hesitant to take up the psalmist's joyful song. Covenantal relationship means that I will be changed in ways that I cannot control. All right now. How many of you would like to be changed in ways that you cannot control? And now we start to see the resistance. We start to see why it's hard to sing this song of celebration. Covenantal relationship changes us, and because of that, covenantal relationship is a trust relationship. Now, if that trust relationship, that changing relationship were just me and God, that's one thing. But covenant relationship with God involves covenant relationship with my neighbor, too. See, in Christ, God extends this covenant not just to me personally. God extends this to all his people. That means that I lose nothing. My loving relationship with God, God's not going to take anything away from me by extending that to others, but it does mean that added to that loving relationship with God, God is drawing me into a covenant relationship with my neighbor. So he wants to add more to me. I can't have a privatized spirituality. I can't have an on-demand streaming God for my own personal playlist. God doesn't work that way. God will not be consumed. A relationship with God involves the love of God and the love of neighbor. As Jesus says, all the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Love God, love neighbor. But now look at how that changes me. Those overlaps, they represent being known. And you know what? There have been times when I haven't wanted to be known. There have been times when I have been afraid to extend trust. There have been times when I have resisted being changed. There have been times when I have just wanted to be me, independent, self-reliant, in control, just me. There have been times when I've wanted to run and hide from others and hide from God. Times when I would have read this psalm not with the reverent awe and wonder of the psalmist, but I would have read it, you have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit down and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in. Behind and before, you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even where there your hand will guide me, your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. You know, we all We all have different life stories, but I wonder if any of you have been in a place where you could read the psalm that way. I wonder if there's anyone in this room who knows what it is to flee from God, to escape his presence, to try to hide. I wonder if there's someone who has asked, why can't God just leave me alone? Am I the only one? God will not force himself on us. God will not force himself on us. Loving covenant can never be forced or coerced. So when we push him away, he lets us. He lets us push. Think about that for a minute. The God of the universe, all-powerful, lets us push him out of our life. What an extraordinary relationship this is. And we see it most dramatically in the cross of Christ, as Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, it is no small thing that God allows himself to be pushed out of the world on a cross. There's a reason why we're hesitant to open ourselves, to be changed by covenantal relationship, and that is that relationships can be hard. And not all relationships reflect loving covenant. You know, we've all had experiences with transactional relationships where others want to get something out of us, or maybe vice versa. Those relationships, they can be functional, but they can also be very hurtful. They can be damaging. And in the end, they leave us feeling like less than we were created to be. Broken, fragile, empty. So maybe we turn to the things of this world. The things. We form relationships with things to fulfill our longings, to fill up our emptiness. The seduction of things, of course, is that they give us that illusion that we're in control. We are the subject, they are the object. We're running the show. If our relationship is with things, we are in control. But the things of this world, they don't want to know us. And when we buy into their empty promises, they leave us feeling more lonely, more fragile, and more broken than ever. So what do we do? What do we do when the world has taken its pieces out of us? When we've experienced fear and failure and disappointment and disillusionment, what do? Oftentimes we build walls around ourselves. And those walls can serve two purposes. They can be defensive walls. If relationships with people, with things, have left us fragile and broken, then a wall can defend us. If no new relationships can get in, then we won't be hurt again. But the wall can have another purpose as well. When we're feeling fractured, when we're feeling broken, in pain and wounded, we can use that wall as a retaining wall to try and keep the pieces together, to try and keep from crumbling altogether. I know what it is to live inside the wall. when the world and the things of this world took their pieces out of me, I found myself in a very dark and bleak place. Alcohol had become my primary relationship. I didn't want it to be. I desperately didn't want it to be. And I tried everything for it not to be. But it had an absolute grip on me. Which sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? Because I'm the subject. It is the object. I'm in control. But it was in control of my life. I'm not going to dwell too long tonight on my own story because I'm happy to share it with you in person, but I don't want to dwell on it too long tonight, only because I don't want you to get stuck on my story and miss what God is speaking into your story tonight. You may have a story that's very different from mine. And you might have a wall that looks very different from mine or from anyone else's, but if your life is feeling walled in tonight, now I just want to testify. There is no life inside the wall. My wall kept others out. They saw what I wanted them to see. I projected the self that they wanted to see, the me that I wanted them to see, but inside the me was crumbling. They didn't see inside my unit. The shades down, the phone off the hook, the door locked. There is no life inside the wall. They saw my confident, cocky projection, but they didn't see inside of me where I felt fragile, worthless, hopeless, desperate, and terrified. There is no life inside the wall. And I thank God that He did not leave me alone. I thank God for a man named David Greenhaw, a man who I greatly respected and admired, who saw through my wall, who saw value in me that I couldn't see in myself. And he showed me grace. He didn't tell me about grace. He didn't teach me about grace. He showed me grace. And I thank God for Kenny. Kenny's a man who spent several years in prison. And for Sean, his friend who'd spent 3 years living on the streets, both of them had what I didn't have. They knew God in Christ, and they knew what it meant to be known by Him. They didn't push it on me. God's love doesn't work that way. God's covenant doesn't work that way, but they were amazingly generous and extraordinarily gracious in sharing it with me as I was ready to receive. And they and others, they took me under their wing. They put up with my arrogance. They saw through my wall, and they walked with me from my captivity into freedom. I thank God that He didn't stand back and wait for me to dismantle my wall. He knew that I couldn't do it. But when I was ready for Him to search me and know me, He took care of my wall. He took care of my brokenness. He took care of my fear. He took care of my pain. He took care of me. And He restored me to me. And He will restore you to you. God made us in love for love. God is love. As we sang, as we started the service tonight, God is love, and you were created in the image of God. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Watch this. You are created in the image of God. This image reflects the covenantal love God intends for us. God of love and neighbor, and it mirrors the very nature of God himself. God in community, 3 in 1, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and there, right in the overlap. You see that? You see something in the overlap? The triquetra, an ancient symbol of our triune God. God is in community, and God calls us into loving community in covenant with one another and in love and covenant with him. My sisters and brothers, none of us is meant to be isolated. None of us is meant to be cut off, detached, alone. You are fearfully, awesomely, wonderfully made in loving relationship to be in loving relationship. You cannot hide. Wherever you go, God is there for you. The God who knows you and loves you will never leave you. The God who knows you and loves you will never leave you alone.